Hello everyone, and welcome to session 19 here of our Mummy the Curse 2nd edition chronicle, Oceans of Eternity. So, to start things off here, just a little recap of where we were at the last session before we get into the thick of things here. So, on the last session of Oceans of Eternity, our mummies, Seshet, Nesret, and Tomos, had continued their machinations in the grand city of Constantinople, seeking vengeance against those who had crushed their cults in a previous descent, as well as pursuing their own personal aspirations. Tomos, a falcon-headed member of the Ma'Kep, was following a lead on a Shuangsen cult operating out of the harbor of Elathurios, but his contact, Captain Bacchus, had gone missing, and it appeared the Shuangsen cultists were trying to find him as well. Tomos managed to track the captain to an old safe house of his cult. Inside, he found Bacchus and the captain's pregnant wife, Megaris, in hiding. Tomos inquired about his lead to the Shuangsen cult, a traitorous member of Bacchus's crew by the name of Libanius. Bacchus revealed that Libanius had walked out the same day that Bacchus had gone into hiding, and that Libanius had taken on another mysterious charter vessel that was to be departing soon. Bacchus's tale, however, was interrupted by the restrained gasps of pain from Megaris. Tomos sent his inheritor Vitalius to fetch another one of his contacts, Alexia, the sister of Eutropius the physician. Alexia and Vitalius returned, however now was a bit out of breath after running through the night and across the city of Constantinople to render aid. Alexia examined Megaris and determined that she had gone into premature labor, and thus began a frantic procedure, with Tomos hastily searching the safe house for any makeshift supplies to aid the inexperienced Alexia. The hectic procedure triggered a memory in Tomos, and he dimly recalled a fragment of his mortal days, witnessing the birth of a familiar child. Tomos realized that he too, perhaps, was once a father or an uncle. But the memory fades, and after the safe delivery of the child, Tomos took Bacchus aside and recruited him into his cult, though Bacchus agreed on the condition that Tomos would protect his wife and child. Tomos also congratulated Alexia on her life-saving skills and apologized for dragging her out in the middle of the night. Alexia was appreciative, but concerned that Tomos always seemed to be surrounded in secrecy and danger, and inquired why he chose her to help instead of her brother, the physician. Tomos promised to explain in the morning and told everyone gathered to get some well-deserved rest in the safe house. Meanwhile, Seshet, a lion-headed member of the Seshahebsu, continued her search for a relic known as the Disc of Aten. She made her way to the manor of the patrician Nicephorus, a new cultist of hers who she tasked with finding the vessel's current owner. Nicephorus revealed he indeed had some leads, but first tried to sate his own curiosity by asking Seshet questions regarding the nature of the relic and why exactly Seshet was searching for it. Seshet shared some information, but Nicephorus's hunger for knowledge was far from satiated. Nonetheless, he revealed a number of suspects for the current owner of the disc, and one of them seemed to align with the other clues Seshet had gathered. A patrician known as Romanus Prodromus, the current chair of the college, or the Imperial College of Law in Constantinople. Sachet asked Nicophorus to arrange for an introduction with the patrician, and Sachet returned to the tomb to wait. Meanwhile, Nesret, a bull-headed member of the Tefa'abi, had taken the newly trained sorcerer Minervina away from the tomb to recover from a rather drastic divination ritual she had performed to search for a potent relic known as the Ashen Reliquary. When Minervina finally awoke, Nesret questioned her on exactly how much she remembered, and she stated that she only recalled bits and pieces of the visions that she had experienced. She also revealed to Nesret that this wasn't actually the first time she had experienced visions regarding the Ashen Reliquary, and she questioned Nesret on why he would even search for such a vessel that was seemingly linked to such profound death and destruction. Nesret stated that he sought the relic because a great evil also sought the relic, and he needed to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Minervina stressed, however, that the vessel should be destroyed, so that no one might ever unleash whatever terrible secrets it might hold. Together, the two pieced together the clues that they had previously gathered, as well as Minervina's sorceress visions to locate the vessel on the volcanic island of Thera, where a great ashen cataclysm long ago led to the downfall of a great civilization. Minervina requested that they head there immediately to secure this dangerous relic, but Nesret stated that he had one last matter to settle in Constantinople first, and that he would need Minervina's help once again, this time to settle a certain quest thrust upon him by his judge. But before we get to that matter, let's switch the perspective here, shall we? Take things back to our Makep here, Tomos. So again, things have almost been kind of a blur with everything surrounding Bacchus and his wife and this surprise birth. And it's the following morning after all of this insanity, and knowing you, I imagine you didn't quite sleep. I imagine probably meditated through the night. But before you know it, the dawn is upon you, and eventually the other members of this sort of makeshift group in hiding begin to awaken from their mortal slumber. And there's that sort of thought running through your head, the recollection of that conversation you had had with Alexia, her suspicions regarding you, and the strange circumstances that always seem to revolve around you, and perhaps the matter of certain memories that seem to confound at least her, although you in part have recalled something of your history with Alexia some 10 years ago. And with all these, I guess, concerns, you've had ample time to think on them. How is it that you want to, I guess, broach this topic, if at all? Do you fully intend on honoring your promise to explain things to Alexia, or do you intend to postpone this for perhaps another day, or another day, and another day still? What's going on in Tomos's mind here?
Well, I imagine she's probably going to keep wondering even if I don't tell her. And maybe it's best if I just rip the band-aid off myself. Also, Thomas sees a potential for one final cultist, perhaps one he can put some actual trust into. Um, Even if they may not have connections like, say, Bacchus or um, Vitalius do. It helps to have one person that you can trust. But
Certainly.
and perhaps maybe he might learn a little more about their history if he broaches this discussion now.
Sure. So, yeah, again, sort of the dawn of the new day in Constantinople here. The hustle and bustle of the city slowly begins to come to life, as do your companions here in this sort of, well, previously abandoned safe house. Um, how do you, I guess, how do you start this conversation? Do you kind of like pull her aside to speak in private here in the safe house? Do you take her elsewhere? How do you want to go about this?
Um, I think I'll. I think it's easiest just to pull her aside in the safe house. Bacchus probably isn't gonna mind. He's probably dealing with his.
He's got other concerns at the moment. Yes, the faint crying of a newborn in the other room, providing shall we say, ample background noise for this encounter. So you find Alexia that morning, and I guess you get the impression, perhaps. Well, actually, better question. Why don't you give me a wits and empathy roll? I want to see how well you can get a read on Alexia at this moment.
What's an empathy?
Yeah, wits and empathy.
Strongest suit.
Zero successes on 2 dice. So yeah, not exactly your strongest suit. You're not quite sure what to think of Alexia as you pull her aside. You've never perhaps been much of a people person. After all, you're a deathless. You have people to do the talking with these mortals, and perhaps being thrust into these situations that you had cultists for has perhaps thrown you a bit out of your element. But nonetheless, you can't quite fathom what's going on in Alexia's head, shall we say. But nonetheless, she doesn't appear, I guess, outwardly, hostile or aggravated, but beyond the surface, you can't quite read much more into her expression. And as you kind of pull her aside, Alexia sort of looks at you again and she says, "So, care to explain what's going on?"
Well, I shall try. Though, you might find it quite unbelievable.
Well, I suppose let's hear it.
Where to start?
I imagine the beginning's a good of a place as any.
4,000 years ago.
Too bad I can't remember that much. Well, okay, I'll start with the obvious. I obviously am not from around here originally. But I think it's in truth, it's really far more than just a difference in location. It's how should I say this? I am more or less from, well, originally from another time period.
And she kind of looks at you like a bit incredulously, and just sort of responds, what do you mean another time period? I mean, you don't look that old. That old.
Remind me what my appearance might be at Sechem 7?
So we've kind of touched on this before, but at the moment, you look more or less as you did in life, though you kind of have the pallor of a rather fresh corpse. So you don't exactly look great. You don't look like a zombie or anything quite of that nature. But you definitely have this sort of sickly sort of pallor about you, and maybe your features are a little shrunken in. But given, I guess, your apparent age, it'd probably give people more the impression that you probably have some sort of illness or something that's rendered you to look this way. I don't think most people would jump to the conclusion that you're a walking corpse.
Well, it may not appear, but my current pallor is not due to some disease. I am very much more or less a living corpse.
And again, she kind of looks at you a bit strangely. This mention of a living corpse. And she kind of ponders it for a moment, and there's almost some sort of twinge of recognition. But Alexia sort of looks at you and she says, I mean, what do you mean a living corpse? You might look dead, but you're clearly not dead.
How should I put this? Through the power of some very ancient, I shall just say deities, I have gained the ability to more or less become immortal. I have undoubtedly lived for thousands of years already. The one stipulation, of course, is I haven't lived through them all continuously. I wake up every now and again to do these deities' biddings, and as a result, I am allowed. My soul is allowed to return to the living, usually within this body. And as time goes on, the corpse, which had originally been put to rest, looks more and more alive. When I initially woke up this time around, I looked quite dead, to put it simply. I think Captain Bacchus can attest. I certainly didn't look very, very human at all.
And Alexia kind of looks at you. It's not even, I guess, there's not so much an air of disbelief, but she seems to be taking what you have to say with some level of actual seriousness, with some measure of sincerity, and you can see that she kind of like sticks to your words as you speak, and like you can almost see kind of like the gears turning in her head, and she looks at you and she says, I remember you. And like you see this sort of like epiphany sort of spreading across Alexia's face, and she's like, I didn't think it was you. I thought you looked familiar, but I thought you had died. I didn't. I never thought you'd, well, come back after that. And like she kind of like sits back as like kind of a very familiar sensation kind of washes over her. You almost get like that sort of sense that she's kind of like grappling with her own like memory coming flooding back to her, something that you've no doubt experienced more than a few times in this current descent as things begin to click for Alexia here. Just as you have some recollection of her, it appears that now she's recovered some recollection of you, now that the truth has been revealed, I suppose. And she's kind of taken aback at first, and after she kind of blurts this out, she sort of takes a few like tentative steps back and is almost kind of lost in her own thoughts for a few moments. How do you respond to this claim?
What does this do you remember me from, say, 10 years ago?
Yes. I suppose it was, God, probably that long ago, wasn't it?
Please, I cannot read your mind. I know it's probably a lot's coming back to you, and it's a lot to, well, take in, but, could you perhaps share with me what you are, remembering, or even feeling? I would certainly like to be clued in on this. Perhaps I can help you sort this out.
And she kind of looks at you and she says, remember, do you not remember?
One side effect of my method to immortality is memories of previous lives do not always translate. They come back in bits and pieces if triggered, but when I wake up, it is more or less a blank slate. I've recovered a few memories, which is why you actually struck me as familiar when we first met, but I do not even remember 10 years ago. I do not all know what happened. I just remember fires going on in the city.
Oh gods, yes, the fires. I don't like to think back to those times, but you saved me. And oh god, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say, but I'm sorry that you saving me led to, well. And then she kind of stops for a moment. She's like, you don't remember, do you?
I shake my head.
I watched you die. And she kind of looks at you with a very hefty sort of sincerity, like, and you actually, why don't you give me another empathy roll here as she drops this on you.
Got this. Just for context, he has absolutely no empathy whatsoever.
Not a lick.
I'm a killer. Nope.
Yeah.
Oof.
Another.
I have no clue what she's thinking.
0 successes on 2 dice there. You got no clue what's going on in her head here as she tries to explain. And
Childhood trauma? What's that?
yeah, what's
No
that?
idea.
Yeah.
I'm so confused why she is stuttering.
Is that a game?
Yeah. So
Just tell me what happened.
in rather plain terms, I suppose, Alexia looks at you and she says, you those nights you kept me safe during the riots, and it cost you everything. I watched
Right.
you. I watched you die. I watched you burn, and and it's all my fault. And then like you see, she kind of like reels back a bit, and like has to kind of take a seat. Kind of you see her like stumble and take a few steps back, and she kind of like looks at her hands again and just kind of almost mutters to herself again, just sort of repeating that phrase like, my God, it's all my fault. And as she's grappling with this, what are you doing? Are you just gonna kind of like sit back?
I
and
have
like
so many. Part of me just has so many questions. The other part of me is like, so the other part of Thomas is like, I do not know how to deal with this. My expertise is in espionage and sabotage and assassination. It is not with comforting people in distress.
Indeed, a bit.
Usually I'm the cause of it.
Yeah, usually I'd say. Yeah, kind of thrust a bit out of your element here. Do you what do you do? Do you try and comfort her? Do you start probing with the questions? How do you want to handle this?
I sort of try to gesture not to. I don't know. I try to gesture with my hands to calm down, and I say, whatever it was, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was not actually your fault. I'm fairly sure that whoever whoever took me down that night, or whatever took me down that night, had been coming from me already. At least if I'm inferring, if my inferences about what you've told me are correct. I don't blame you for whatever happened to me.
And Alexia kind of looks up back at you again, and there's sort of a almost pained look on her face, but she does her best to sort of compose herself again, and she kind of looks at you and she says, well, I suppose it's all right. I mean, look at you now. I mean, you're back. That's good. And she kind of nervously laughs again, returning a bit more to form, shall we say, for Alexia. And she kind of ponders on that for a moment, and she's like, I kind of shudders, is like, I don't even want to imagine what that entails. And you see her kind of struggling to, shall we say, comprehend the nature of coming back to life after what you've been through, and probably imagining it not being a pleasant process.
My hands. Listen, I don't think we need to discuss that right now. Just know that it happens, and as I am right now, I feel quite fine. Let's leave it at that.
Well, where does that leave us now? Why, I guess, are you back?
Well,
and then she starts kind of getting back to the original topic, I guess, of conversation. You know, why are you back, and why me? And then the gears start to kind of click, I suppose. And you kind of get the impression she might be getting perhaps the wrong idea regarding why you chose her as opposed to Eutropius, the physician. Do you bother to correct her on your suspicions regarding her brother, or do you let her kind of form her own opinions on why you chose her to handle this affair?
I do try to say something. It says, you're probably still wondering why I asked you to come. I'm not sure what you're thinking, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I did choose you because I suppose at the end of the day, my gut told me to trust you, and I sort of figured you seemed like the kind of person that would be able to handle all of this all this information being thrown at you, as well as something like a challenge, such as delivering a newborn. I asked you here because I feel as though I can trust you. I don't really have a logical explanation, but sometimes
You
you have to trust your gut on these things.
And she doesn't entirely appear to be satisfied with that answer, and she kind of responds to that and says, trust. But you trust me, but you don't trust Eutropius? I don't... I thought he saved
quite.
your friend.
He did. It's just that...
Does he know?
No, he doesn't know anything about me as far as I can tell. It's not that I don't trust his skills as a doctor, it's just... I got the impression he might not be able to fully understand or be able to deal with some of the information I'm giving you, and I guess you could say, I think the reason, problem is, I wish my memories were better, but my suspicion is why I was incapacitated that many years ago might be related as to why I've had Captain Bacchus and his wife stay here. I have a suspicion another group has that, even as far as 10 years ago, as I've clashed with, might still be hunting me and my fellow as for now I'll just say group members, Moret, people who are like me in their nature.
And she kind of looks a bit confused at that, and she kind of stammers like, there are more of you? How many of you are there?
I am not the right person to ask.
At least 4.
At least 4 in the city that I know of. There's a reason why we are pretty well hidden. We don't generally show ourselves very much.
I can imagine. I could scarcely imagine what the church would think of all of this. Well,
that isn't every detail I could give you, but I also get the impression you are trying to comprehend a lot of it as is.
it certainly is a lot. I didn't exactly understand much back then, and I don't understand all that much now either, but I'll try.
Don't hesitate to ask questions or clarifications. It's a lot it's a lot for a person to understand. A lot for humans to understand.
Well, I guess, where does this leave us now? Where does this leave me, I suppose? these people, they're coming after you and your associates.
I suppose I should clarify. I don't believe they are necessarily making a concerted effort against us. I am under the impression they may not know we've returned, or perhaps insultingly enough, they may not see us as big of a threat to whatever their plans are. I just do not know what they've been doing the past 10 years, so I wouldn't, but I won't lie and say this couldn't, this may not later turn into something a little more confrontational as time goes on, though.
Well, what do you intend to do now?
As of right now, let's say, I had a organization of individuals 10 years ago. That organization collapsed since let's call it a death. I found a few who are still alive and remember, but for all intents and purposes, I'm just assuming the rest have either left or have passed. As it is right now, I am trying to rebuild my organization.
Well, I suppose I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. With, I guess, everything going on, what should we do? And you see she kind of motions towards the others in the other room. How long do you mean to keep them here?
Vitalius and Bacchus will undoubtedly have to leave. I'll keep Bacchus's family here for a little while until we can find another location for them to actually live. Their old home was ransacked.
And what would you have me do?
I'm well aware I've not made your day easy, and it's just the beginning of it.
You could say that.
But I would actually like to ask you to join my organization.
And she kind of looks at you a bit kind of quizzically, and she says kind of, join you? What is this organization you speak of? What would you ask of me? What am I getting myself into here? And there's a bit of genuine nervous laughter, given everything that's transpired surrounding you. The thought of, I guess, throwing herself into the thick of this mess gives her a bit of pause.
Call ourselves the X-Men.
Well, as of right now, my organization works as a group of covert agents. doing the work of... To say deity would perhaps not be an accurate statement. I suppose I should let you know what I refer to him as. I serve a being known as Neheb-Ka. He is my judge in the underworld. He is the one who decides when I return to the living. And though I have not directly heard from him, I believe he would not have sent me here again if he did not wish for me to do something. And in the past, I've used my skills as a spy to do his mission.
And again, she kind of like nervously laughs, like you're talking about like these underworld gods and secret missions. And
this bandage taking a while to peel off.
Yeah, this is a lot. And you can tell it's starting to sort of take its toll on Alexia, who's struggling to process a whole lot of things.
Old friend comes back from years of never seeing them after a long period of time, and suddenly they're trying to get you to join a cult.
Yeah, you come back from
I didn't call it that.
Yeah, you come back from the dead, and now you're trying to swindle her into your cult. Yeah.
Swindle?
Every underworld god kind of sounds like a cult.
But anyway, getting serious again. So Alexia kind of takes all of this in and finds it a bit hard to swallow. All this talk of gods and missions. And Alexia sort of looks at you rather bluntly, and she just says, well, how do I fit into all of this?
As
what is it that you want from me?
As a trusted confidant, and I suppose as far as actions go, someone who can pick up information. You undoubtedly have, well, I suppose I should go into more details, should you accept, but my organization thrives on the passing of information. What we do with that information, well, is up for my decision-making, but long ago, I decided through my skills as an agent of my old civilization, the best way for me to serve it is to gather as much information as I possibly can. That information will undoubtedly help with my judge's mission.
Alexia. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, Alexia kind of takes all of this in, and you can kind of get the impression that she isn't really getting all of this by any stretch. But the gears sort of finally click here, and Alexia looks at you and she says, I can scarcely fathom everything that you've had to say, but I will say
if
you need my help, you will have it. You saved my life once, and if you need of me, I will do I will do what I can to repay that debt. I owe you that much, at least. If I can be of assistance to you, then I shall. I can't say I understand what it is that you want of me, but I will do what I can. I hope that's enough.
That is, given the situation, I would agree that's more than enough. I do apologize for dropping all that, but I guess there was really no good way to try and explain it. And I suppose I still have more to explain, but perhaps this is enough for one day.
Yeah. You've certainly given me a lot to think
I will
about.
I will say this. The invitation is not. I won't force the issue if you decide you do not wish to join my organization. So don't worry about that. But I would appreciate any help as is, and the invitation will stand, even if you say no. I will not come to collect it if you give me a negative, but I want to give you some time to process this. And in addition, I won't be able to. Another matter requires my attention, so I won't be asking you to do anything for a little while. Hopefully that'll give you enough time to process this a bit more.
Yes, I suppose I could use some time. But Alexei just sort of looks at you again, and perhaps a bit relieved, I suppose. Some progress having been made. Alexei just kind of leaves you with to put it bluntly, as you make your exit, Alexei just simply says, "Thank you for everything."
You are very welcome. I have no regrets. And one more thing. You think you could keep this location secret?
But
I suppose that was.
yes, of course, yes.
If for no one else, then for Bacchus and his family.
I'll try my best. And with that, where does Thomas intend to head now? Shall we
I think I'll
return to the tune?
Yes.
Do you
I'll quickly.
do you intend to bring Vitalius with you, or do you leave him here to survey the safe house?
I'll take Vitalius with me.
Okay.
I'll tell Bacchus, stay here for the moment. We'll, for right now, be with your family. We'll figure out how to go forward later. I'll have Vitalius bring some supplies later.
Very well. All right, and with that, we'll conclude this little scene here with Tomos here, and we're going to switch gears to Seshet here. Now, Seshet, it's perhaps been a bit of a strange night for you after having, shall we say, returned from the palace of Nicephorus, his family estate. It's probably the first, well, maybe not the first time, but you spend the night in a, shall we say, a rather empty tomb, save for the ever watchful presence of Father John and your seemingly pet cat Mao. Whether you've adopted him or he's adopted you is perhaps up for debate. But nonetheless, it's a quiet night for you, leading into the following dawn, as it were. And in shall we say, your meditation in the morning is interrupted by some shall we say, activity in the manor above your tomb. And it's there that you find a certain someone has, shall we say, arrived with a very special parcel for you. And as you make your way to, shall we say, investigate, a runner, courtesy of your, shall we say, newly minted cultist, Nicephorus, has come to deliver a letter to you, a letter of introduction to the, shall we say, the subject of your investigation here, the patrician known as Romanus Potromus. And as requested, Nicephorus has sort of written you up this rather formal letter of introduction that should hopefully get you through the door and into the good graces of this Romanus fellow.
Well, while I'm still here, I'm just gonna do a very quick meditation at the centering relic and drain a few precious pillar points out of that before we move on.
All right.
There we go.
How much you want to pull out of the?
I'll just
tomb?
take 3. No one else is here.
All right. So you pull the 3 from the tomb here before you make your exit. Though something does happen as you draw on the relic here. Now, you've had, shall we say, unusual phenomena happen before. They sort of ephemeral whispers sort of teetering at the edge of your perception. And you've heard them grow, shall we say, progressively louder, progressively, well, stranger. But it's something very different this time as you pull the energies from your strange centering relic. The voices are clear. They're crisp now. And it almost feels as you place your hand upon the relic, it almost feels like someone's right next to your shoulder, whispering in your ear. And this sort of, shall we say, ghastly voice greets you rather simply with, shall we say, a rather grim proclamation. The voice whispering in your ear, it says, betrayed. Another voice whispers to you, "Forsaken." A third voice whispers, "Trapped."
What was the third one? I didn't hear that.
Third one whispers, "Trapped."
Ah.
And finally, a fourth voice ends the chorus with 2 words. "Murderer." And the last word, "Why?"
Sounds like a question.
But as you kind of turn about the room, you don't see any sort of ghastly apparitions, just these sort of spectral voices sort of casting into your ear. And yes, rather uncomfortably, shall we say, making these strange sort of proclamations. But nonetheless, do you continue to pay them any heed, or do you make way towards?
I think about it for a second, then I realize there's no way I can answer this without some kind of context. So I'm like, well, no point really dwelling on this too much longer. Can't solve a puzzle without all the pieces. And yeah, it's just that's also wanting to get her hands on that relic, because she feels that poor Secum, pulling away at her. So yeah, she doesn't spend too much time pondering the meaning of these words.
Yeah, the specters in your tomb will have to wait, I suppose. There are more pressing needs at hand.
Following movie logic, I fully expect there to be a scene at some point where suddenly, I get the much-needed piece of context where I'm able to figure out what they were talking about.
Something like that, perhaps. But yeah, we'll just let this problem continue to do its thing, I suppose. There are relics to be had, and with that, I presume you make your way over to the estate of this Romanus fellow.
Yeah. Romanus.
So, leaving the safety of your, shall we say, tomb behind, you make your way over to the estate, which, luckily for you, isn't that far off.
Under my nose the entire time.
Yeah, it was so close to you this whole time. Also located on the first hill here, just as your tomb isn't, or shall we say, is also located on the first hill, not too far away. And again, it's a rather short, shall we say, jaunt across the city here to arrive at the estate. And within, you are greeted by a manservant, I suppose, who, shall we say, looks at you a bit quizzically, and ponders your appearance here, and simply says, "Excuse me, miss, what business do you have today?"
I seek a meeting with Romanus. I carry a letter of introduction from, brain fart,
Nikephoros.
what's his name? Well, that's his first name, isn't it?
Yeah, Nikephoros is his first
I'm
name.
trying to remember his last name.
Nikephoros Acropolis.
Yeah, Nikephoros Acropolis. There we go.
Yes. So, yeah, you kind of name drop your patron here, and the manservant sort of looks at the invitation and sort of, extends his hand. He's like, do you mind? And sort of politely asks to have the invitation that you hold. And he happily accepts this. And he doesn't open the letter, but you see he does sort of take a moment to glance at the wax seal, sort of holding this parchment here, and seems satisfied with that. And the manservant sort of looks at you and he says, if you don't mind waiting for just a few moments here, I will fetch the head of the household. And leaves you to sort of, shall we say, awkwardly wait outside the home here. And shall we say, awkward is probably an apt term here, as moments start to bleed into minutes. And the, shall we say, this Romanus figure kind of keeps you waiting for a while. And, I surmise you probably don't have a sundial on you somewhere to get a, shall we say, an accurate measurement of time. But it definitely feels, at least to you, that things are dragging on here. And just sort of when you're at the edge of going from mildly inconvenienced to annoyed, perhaps, the manservant makes his return and looks at you. And why don't you go ahead and give me what's an empathy roll? -2.
-2. I am good at this, unlike my other compatriot. One success.
A single success on 7 dice.
It's a success.
That's all it takes. So the manservant here takes a bit of a shall we say, tries to be polite about this, but nonetheless you kind of get the sense behind the facade that your arrival here isn't, shall we say, entirely welcome. And the manservant looks at you and he says, my apologies for keeping you waiting, miss. If you would be so kind as to come inside, Romanus will be with you shortly.
Yeah, I'll come inside.
And
What's it like inside the building? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Inside the Romanus estate, it's, shall we say, a quite different affair than that of Nicophorus, or even the White Jackal and his, shall we say, palace. But it's a rather humble affair here. There's no sort of ostentatious decorations, no, gold and purple adorning the walls. It almost gives you the impression of almost more of a study than a manor. And as fitting for, as you now know, the chair of the Imperial College of Law, the sort of, I guess, defining feature of this manor appears to be a rather sizable private library, sort of rows of, shall we say, shelving containing, scrolls and parchments that, sort of, given your experience in the guild, as a former scribe and also your previous experience within the Imperial College, this is the kind of thing that does kind of take a small fortune to amass. Texts are not exactly cheap in this day and era, in the reign of Justinian here in Constantinople. There's certainly some wealth to be had, but clearly it's not being put into, tapestries and statuaries, but a rather sizable collection of works here. And sort of fitting for this, shall we say, personal collection, this library, there's a kind of sizable, again, I guess I would say, study attached to it. And there's like a bit of a sort of hearth situated at the far end of the room, and there's kind of a large, wide table sort of set out, and you see there's kind of various scrolls and texts that are sort of set out across the table, sort of almost like mid-work or mid-research. And
yeah, yeah. Oh, I wanted to say that I want to take a quick peek at like what the scrolls are on the table, see what he's been recently reading or studying.
yeah, you let your curiosity get the better of you, and while you wait, you kind of take a few steps over to the table and give it a shall we say, a bit of a spy here, and glance at the sort of assembled texts. And it's, shall we say, well, at least what you managed to get a glimpse of, it's quite practical, shall we say. Something that does rather draw your attention appears to be, shall we say, an inventory of sorts. One for the Imperial Treasury, and as you take a quick skim of the documents, a rather, shall we say, strange revelation sort of makes itself known. You've seen sort of the grand opulence and splendor of Constantinople, the Hagia Sophia and other, the Hippodrome, all these other feats of arts and architecture, and this sort of magnificence of the city. But there's an uncomfortable, shall we say, truth sort of lingering underneath all of this. From your cursory glance of these records of the treasury, it seems the vaults are starting to run rather low at the moment. Things financially aren't looking all that great for this Roman Empire. But you don't have too long to ponder on this thought as Romanus makes his entry into the room. Do you make sort of like a hasty effort to try and like conceal your curiosity, or do you just kind of accept that I guess you've been caught snooping, or how do you deal with this as you hear his sort of footsteps coming around the corner?
Yeah, I guess like I turn turn like yeah, yeah, Chasette's been looking at the papers on the table, and she's gonna start like as soon as she starts to hear like the footsteps like coming around, she's gonna like start like walking like around the room, like she's like been like taking it in, like looking at all of the I guess all the shelves and the books and whatnot, trying to like disguise the fact that she was looking at those particular papers, like by like, oh no, I was just like looking at like the general like ambience of your library.
Yeah, why don't you give me a manipulation and subterfuge roll as you attempt to cover your snooping here.
I'm not that good at this, but apparently good enough.
All right.
I rolled a single success.
We're gonna see how Romanus reacts to this. This will be a contested roll.
Damn it!
Yeah. Looks like you're in the clear. Just narrowly there by the skin of your teeth. You managed to sort of play it off. Sort of looking around.
Know what?
Yeah. As Romanus enters the room here, and you spy him, and he's, shall we say a bit of an older man, maybe in his, I guess you'd say probably in his 40s, mid 40s, perhaps. And he's kind of sort of got a bit of that sort of almost statuesque sort of posture to him. He's sort of giving off that impression of a proper Roman citizen. But you kind of see that, he's not quite the man he used to be, perhaps. The beard and the hair are starting to sort of gray around the edges, and his posture is sort of marked by, shall we say, a very slight limp on one of his legs. But he does sort of his best to maintain, shall we say, a noble posture, as it were, as he enters the room here to see you. And Romanus looks at you, and he kind of, let me take this back. Do you try and break the ice first, or do you wait for Romanus to speak?
I'll let him break the ice.
Yeah. So Romanus enters the room here, and she sees you, sort of looking about, admiring the place, not doing anything suspicious, and seems, I guess, satisfied in your curiosity. And Romanus sort of walks over, and she stops a couple feet away from you, and you see he's holding the letter of invitation that you had provided. And you see he sort of takes a cursory glance at it and back to you. And he says rather bluntly, "Well, Sachet, I didn't realize that you were working with Nicophorus. I see you've found some new friends, I suppose. Frankly, I didn't expect to, I suppose, see you again."
I've been getting that a lot recently. But yes, it was a new acquaintance of mine, and I'm beginning to rapidly realize that I've had some kind of past relationship with this person.
Want to give me a memory roll?
Yeah. Oh god, I did it!
Oh, beautiful! A single success on that memory roll. So something clicks as he sort of gives you this impression that you've met before, and you realize where you've met him before, or rather the context in which you've met before. Something that brings perhaps an unexpected twinge of anger into this, shall we say, awkward reunion. And things start to ring a bell. The chair of the Imperial College of Law, and you start to remember your exile from your expulsion, rather, from the Imperial College of Law. And you don't, shall we say, remember everything, but you can't shake the feeling that this man before you, this Romanus, was responsible, perhaps at least in part, for your expulsion. And now things sort of start to click as to why perhaps the manservant was not pleased by your arrival. Yes, as well as Romanus here, who looks a bit shall we say, he's not exactly smiling during this exchange.
Yeah, I'm picking up the feeling from Romanus here that there's bad feelings between me and him. Jesus, that's gonna make things a bit more difficult on me.
Indeed.
Hmm.
So, what brings you to my estate, Sachet?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out if I want to eviscerate this man or forgive him.
Oof.
Yeah. I understand that me and you have had our differences before, but that's all in the past now. I would like to offer you the opportunity of a new beginning between me and you.
I suppose I'm listening.
Yeah, and she said it's gonna go like on a bit about a while about like, you know, bad blood and whatnot. But what she's really trying to actually do here is try to dredge up what like the specific details without admitting that she's forgotten.
trying to steer the conversation towards.
Yeah, I feel
towards
like socialize and manipulate would probably be appropriate here. Trying to get him to essentially tell me what's happened without him without drawing suspicion that I forgot.
I feel like in this case this is probably a good, shall we say, application of subterfuge, trying to sort of bamboozle our pal here into revealing details without revealing your own, I guess, nature or context of the situation, of trying to subtly sort of manipulate this conversation or steer it into a bit of clever wordplay here.
Yeah. I'm gonna spend a point of ab to reinforce my manipulation.
Sure.
And
this will be contested again.
yeah. During this time, I would have liked to have unleashed the first tier of "Blessed is the God King" as a subtle utterance, just to give
Fair
myself
enough.
that just extra bit of luck.
Just really pushing this here, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go. Let's do this. Wait, no. Yeah. What did he roll?
4 successes for you, and let's see what our distinguished scholar here can roll as well.
So that's an exceptional success for me. I succeed on 3 successes when with a reinforced attribute for my social stuff.
Yeah. So
Divine countenance.
between your affinities and utterances, you managed to rather handily steer this conversation, and from what you can gather, Romanus doesn't seem surprised that the topic of conversation appears to be about your expulsion. It seems that's more or less what he had expected your, shall we say, unexpected arrival here was about. But as sort of this conversation plays out, you do manage to dredge up some of these details, some of the context here. And with your exceptional success, what you manage to glean from the bits of this rather, I would say, tense conversation, perhaps a bit stressful, but what you can glean, at least, sort of reading between the lines, I guess, is your expulsion was perhaps one of, I guess, several, you would say. You weren't the only one expelled. And, again, for context sake, this expulsion, again, happened during the events of the Nika riots 10 years ago. Now, again, as I mentioned, you weren't the only one. Others had been, shall we say, expelled from not only the Imperial College, but from the Imperial bureaucracy itself. Your, shall we say, mentor, your patron, as it were, if you can call him that, Trebonian, was also removed from his position, from his office, alongside another John the Cappadocian. And these, shall we say, weren't entirely, I guess, pointed at you. The sort of prevailing, shall we say, will of the people at the time seemed to be calling for blood, for the removal of these two figures who had a rather significant, shall we say, finger in the metaphorical pie of law in the city of Constantinople. Their legal reforms, and by extent, your assistance with them, were not taken very kindly by the nobility of Constantinople. And during those riotous days, those, shall I say, that distaste for the law was, shall we say, worked up into the will of the people, a will that was not ignored by the emperor. And these two were removed due to the outcry of the people. But reading between the lines, your inclusion on this list is a bit of an outlier. See, as far as you are aware, you are just assisting Trebonian with these affairs, given perhaps you might assume your deathly state and your other duties might preclude you from devoting yourself fully to such affairs. But nonetheless, you had a hand to play, but not necessarily an overt one. Not that the will of the people, or rather the will of the people poked and prodded by the nobility, would warrant. But you get the impression that someone rather specific, someone made some effort to include you in that list. You were famous per se within, the realm of the law, within the college, but you weren't nearly a public figure as Trebonian or John the Cappadocian, where you didn't quite share that same limelight. So why would someone drag you into that affair? And from your, I guess, exceptional success, perhaps a bit more context onto this. You wager that whoever is responsible for your inclusion in this, your, shall we say, additional expulsion, Romanus here had something to do with it, or shall we, that's, I guess, obvious, but Romanus, you get the impression that he knows who's responsible for your addition, though he's clearly not I guess, saying it over the course of this, I guess, roundabout conversation. But you get the impression that he knows, but that's not exactly a fact that he's willing to openly share or inadvertently share. He's keeping that card rather close to his chest. And how do you respond to this as sort of this conversation flows and you sort of, again, reading between the lines, the context here? How do you respond to this sort of revelation? Do you keep the focus on your expulsion here, or do you try and shift things to get to the meat of the matter?
The reason I'm here.
Yeah. And on that same matter, actually, why don't you give me another Kefir roll? I would say either perception or perhaps an investigation would be appropriate here.
Either all's the same to me. Dice pool wise, I get 11 dice from my 7 extra dice from my second, and I get the rogue quality on this. So it doesn't really matter because I rolled 6 successes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 successes.
Woo! Yeah, that Succum coming in strong to assist your Kefir there. So, what you gather, sort of as this conversation is continuing, I guess, and something else is sort of tugging at your attention. Perhaps not so, I guess, consciously making an effort to search, but rather unconsciously, something seems to be pulling you. You can feel it. You can feel the Sahem bleeding off the disc of a 10. You know it must be here somewhere. And with your exceptional, you have a pretty good idea where, though it's a bit of perhaps a curious revelation. Your Sahem seems to be pulling you towards one of the walls where these, shall we say, shelves have been arranged with their scrolls and texts. However, you don't see any, passage or egress, and the disc isn't sitting, on display on the shelves here. And yet it's somewhere beyond this, somewhere behind this. But a means of reaching it, shall we say, is beyond, I guess, obvious observation.
Like maybe a secret door or something.
Yeah.
Chamber.
Something over there is giving you the impression, the pull of Succum is... this one was yanking you in that direction. You can feel the threads, growing tight. You've never been this close to it before, and now that you are this close, it's almost more tantalizing than before. You have sort of a general, I guess, sense for its Sahem at this point, and you're quite pleased at the revelation that you feel. The intensity of this pull gives you the impression that this is no mere trinket. This is a rather potent relic for it to be tugging you so tightly here.
I imagine it's taken to set a little bit, a bit of effort to maintain like a straight face with like just like this.
This hunger for Sahem pulling you.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been like, dancing like around him, trying to figure out like, trying to figure out like the past and whatnot, but I guess like how do I feel like the emotions between like me and him like I know it's tense, but does he like hate me or anything?
Why don't you give me what's an empathy roll?
Yeah, all right. Any modifiers?
Um, I'll do resisted this time. He's not exactly making a great deal of effort to try and conceal his motives. We'll just go for, I guess it'd be his composure in this case. We'll say -3 onto this roll to get a read on him.
One success.
A single success. That's all it takes. So you get the impression that he doesn't perhaps hate you. There is not that level of animosity here. There's certainly an element of, I want to say, disrespect, perhaps. This sort of like, as best as you can gather. You get the impression here that Romanus is displeased, shall we say, that you are like coming back to him at this point. Like you get the impression that whatever transpired before, like gave you the impression that he was not willing to, shall we say, renegotiate the terms of your expulsion, and you get the impression that those feelings, shall we say, have not eroded over the decade here. You get the sort of impression that he's not entirely willing to, shall we say, broach this topic again. And yeah, kind of, again, from what you've gathered thus far, you kind of get the impression that he might sort of mistakenly believe that you are back here to try and, well, convince him otherwise of the necessity of your expulsion and perhaps petition him for readmittance. And he's not too pleased at that. But again, you don't get the impression that he like hates you or anything, but sort of this like, why are you back here? Like I said it was final before. You sort of get that sort of impression that, you know, why are you doing this?
Come on, I had better thoughts than you than this. I didn't think you'd come back here crawling, begging for readmittance.
I wasn't going to do it then. Why am I doing it now? That's the sort of vibe that you get from the conversation. But what do you do with all this information? These revelations?
Part of me does want to ask him for readmittance. Yeah, Ooh. I think the set wants to try to kind of improve, try to diffuse the situation like somewhat. She senses that pretty like it's become kind of like it's like tense, and she wants to try to transition it to a more like not as tense, maybe not casual, but like
try and I guess restore the vibes. Try and
restore the vibes.
Yeah.
I want to send out a vibe.
Bring this down to a more pleasant level.
Less confrontational feeling, mood. Yeah.
I guess in that case,
feel like presence.
Yeah,
probably be the stat.
Probably presence and I guess persuasion, I guess, would be the most applicable, but I suppose I could see others being used.
I can also see socialize. Not like I have like a million dots in socialize or anything.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, you know what? I'll give you socialize.
Yes, let me use socialize. Um.
And this will be contested again.
Okay. I don't suppose I could use my fame in this regard then. Don't think he's impressed with my fame.
Yeah, not particularly. And also technically well, I guess that technically fall under status, but never mind. Yeah, he's not particularly impressed by your fame, given the fact that he was perhaps directly or indirectly responsible for your well, perhaps fame or infamy, depending on your perspective. But yeah, nonetheless.
Yeah. So contested. I forget. That's where you roll against
Yes,
me, or do I?
he'll roll against you. And he's got 2 successes. Oh!
I think it's a reroll.
We're tied. We got to do a reroll. I don't think he's gonna win the reroll against your 12 dice here, but we'll see. It doesn't favor him. All right. One success over him. Yes, 3 successes. So it's, shall we say, a hard fought battle on your end to try and calm the nerves, reduce the tension here. But you managed to do it, shall we say, somewhat. And you notice that Romanus sort of relaxes a bit. But now that things are a bit, I guess, calmer, how do you intend to, shall we say, utilize the situation?
Yeah. I guess with that memory roll early, do I ever get like the sense that they, like, I know like me and him, like, recent history's been like tense, but like before that, like, were we ever like cordial or like friendly with each other at all? Like, do I like get any sort of like sense of like
Yeah, so
friendship ever between us?
from what you can recall, you surmise that things weren't always this way. That this is, shall we say, a recent development, or at least as recent as 10 years ago can be. But I guess from your perspective, it is
Pretty
more recent, yes. But nonetheless, yeah, you get the impression, especially now that things have settled down, that there wasn't always this tension between the two, and surely at some point you must have worked together, or perhaps adjacent, or in some capacity with each other, given his position.
Yeah. I kind of want to like now that I've diffused the situation a bit, I want to like kind of like go off on a little bit and like try to like whatever happened between us. Like, I thought we used to work well together, you know, and try to like bring up like that sort of like nostalgia for like simpler times that people generally have, you know, before like big dramas and whatnot. Yeah. Um. And yeah, she's gonna try to like, I guess, like try to befriend him. I guess is like the best attempt, the word for it. Yeah. Basically, yeah. So she's basically trying to butter him up before she can ask what she really wants out of him.
Sure. Yeah, let's butter him up
break out
here.
the effort for it, yeah.
Yeah. I think in this case, if we're going for sort of the buttering him up,
Persuasion, probably.
Yeah, I'd say either persuasion or maybe expression, if you want to try and like draw on your spotchy memory of the old days and try and, you know, pull on some sort of
go with expression.
heartstrings.
I'm really good at expression, so you know.
Yeah.
Would this be contested or resisted?
Let's go with resisted. -3 again.
Alright.
He's not entirely opposed to being on amicable terms to you.
I am going to use my rote from my Blessed is the God King. Since I rolled 0 successes on that, and I don't want that. I want this to succeed.
Sure. How many rote rolls you have left for the scene?
When I unleash the first tier, I get like a lingering rote that I can apply to any one roll in the scene, and I can apply it after I've seen the initial result
Oh, okay.
of the roll.
Solid.
And that can only be used once per scene, but I have the Ren
Once.
effect, which lets me use twice per scene.
Okay, so twice per scene. All right.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and use that rote there.
Came in handy.
Does come in handy, as it does net you 2 successes here. So indeed, you manage to pull on some, shall we say, flowery language and manage to. I don't want to necessarily say that the two of you are friends, but things have certainly gone in the direction of a slightly more amicable relationship. With, I guess, with what you have to say, Romanus kind of takes it, and there is, as much as you can surmise, perhaps some lingering sense of a professional relationship and respect that you manage to kind of dredge up there, and there is perhaps again some lingering respect, even if begrudgingly, that this man seems to have for you, and you manage to kind of pull that to the surface. But what do you intend to do with that now that you've kind of, as you said, butter him up with this conversation? What do you intend to go from here?
Yeah, I think Susette's gonna go straight for the kill. Mainly because we have a break coming up in 7 minutes. Yeah, and yeah. Oh, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't come here without other reasons, and they're not what you think they are. I assure you, I'm not here to ask you for readmittance into the Imperial Academy. No, I forget the
Imperial College.
College.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, it was one of the place of learning. Just having it. Yeah, so I'm not here to ask for readmittance into the Imperial College. I'm looking for something. It's a ring called the Disc of a 10, and I've come to ask you for it.
Romanus kind of looks at you, and that level of friendship that you had so carefully constructed
Vanishes.
It's really the only flimsy thing holding him back at this moment. And Romanus kind of looks at you, and there's definitely some recognition in his eyes that he knows what you're talking about. And Romanus sort of looks at you, almost kind of guarded. And Romanus says, "It is not mine to give."
Then whose is it?
Romanus sort of takes a few tentative steps backwards. You detect almost detect a hint of fear in him as he takes a few steps back. And he says, Do you not know? Do you not know where you stand?
Enlighten me.
And there's sort of upraised eyebrow from Romanus, and then sort of a yes, and nonetheless still kind of on edge again. Romanus informs you, I cannot give you the disc. It belongs to the conquering quill.
I feel like I've heard that name before.
Yeah, why don't you give me another memory roll? Let's see what that jogs.
Hey, success!
So, kind of, I guess.
You know what? I
Let's
think
see.
I figured out who kicked me out of the college.
Yeah. You things start to come into picture here in rather sudden and alarming clarity. You recognized Romanus before, and at the mention of the conquering quill, everything starts to come together. All these pieces fall into place. The conquering quill, or his title, as it were, you know this individual, another Arisen. And where do you know that name? Yes. You know that the Conquering Quill was a member of the Kenthenu, the other Muret operating within Constantinople, of which you've met one of them, the White Jackal. And more than that, as this memory comes into play, you kind of put two and two together here, and you realize that this Romanus here, you're pretty sure.
This is the guy I fucking hate, right?
You're pretty sure that he's a cultist of this conquering quill fellow. And judging from your shared interests in the Imperial College, there might be something to be had there. But more pertinently in this situation, as all these memories come crashing back down, the connections to the conquering quill and White Jackal and the Murat, the Kenthenu, and this Romanus here, and this juicy relic waiting underneath. Something else, shall we say, clicks. This fearfulness in this cultist that you've noticed. You do remember the White Jackal mentioning some of his other Muret mates. And you remember recalling that that one of them had, shall we say, been on that archaeological expedition that had unearthed these the tablets that you had so perilously retrieved for the White Jackal. You get the impression that this conquering quill, he might very be this one and the same, and that this now helpless mortal before you, his arisen patron, might not be anywhere near in a position to help him.
Oh man.
Not just that, a man who has wronged you and is now seemingly defenseless before you.
Oh, man, what could I do? Do we want to take a break now?
Yeah, I think on that tense little cliffhanger here, we'll take a bit of a break. Anyway, yeah, so we're gonna head to break here, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes to see where things progress from here. So until then, sit tight, and we will be right back. right. Welcome. We are back from our little break here, and it's time to get back into the meat of things. Though we're going to leave that little cliffhanger there for now, and we're going to shift perspective again to the last member of our Meret, Nesret here. And we had sort of last left off with you and Minervina hatching a plan, as it were. You had been tasked by your judge, by Nebha the Flame, to enact, shall we say, judgment on a sinner here in the city of Constantinople. A man that you had discovered, Anthemius, who is, shall we say, an artist. One who, according to your deductions, has painted rather, shall we say, heretical works of art in town here. Some might say anti-Christian propaganda. The last piece that you'd witnessed was a quite literal representation of the sacrament of Jesus providing his body and blood shed to his disciples. Quite literally of these figures eating and drinking of the quite literal flesh of Christ. Quite a gory and horrific display for someone to paint quite so prominently upon the edifice of a church. And you had spoken with Anthemius briefly, and although you knew of his involvement in this, thanks to your magic, the affinity granted to you by your guild, he proved a rather difficult nut to crack. You knew he was a liar, but he proved to be a rather good one. And at least from the outside, he gave you the impression of a very spiritual, very faithful man. His manner sort of adorned with rather fine works of religious art and other paraphernalia gives you, well, it gave you the impression of, well, a man of the faith, which contrasted rather strongly with this, shall we say, heretical art that you had mystically deduced he was responsible for. And you kind of yet have put all those pieces together yet and figured out what's going on here. But you've constructed a plan with your, well, newly trained sorceress, Minervina, a bit of a ruse, as it were, to trick our artist into revealing his heretical inclinations. Now, the two of you, I believe, had spoken in that inn, hatching a plan, as it were. We kind of last left off with the two of you going over the finer details of what Minervina would say, what sort of identity that she'd take on to hopefully convince him to shall we say, be willing to take on a commission for a similar work of heretical art. Now, let's pick up things, shall we say, en route. Sort of the following morning, Minervina's had a chance to rest, and you've had a chance to perhaps think over what it is you want to do, what it is you want to say when you do confront Anthemius here. And your trip through the city here to the residence of Anthemius, shall we say, is slightly eventful. As you make your way there, you come across a small crowd that's gathered. And as you sort of spy, shall we say, above the crowd, they seem to be gathered around another church. And once again, there appears to be another work of art, and you see the peasantry sort of gathered around it, and a few very, very displeased priests who can hardly stand to look at this image. And as you sort of try and, I guess, get a better view of what exactly this crowd is staring at, you see before you another work of art, though quite different this time. It's an image of a somewhat familiar face, that of the Emperor Justinian and his royal attire. Excuse me. Sorry for the dog. Bark. In this this image of Justinian, he appears to be riding atop a golden cross, and it seems to be carried on the back of suffering slaves and peasants, kind of dragging this great gold edifice, shall we say, with Justinian riding upon it, and he appears to be leading this cross and these people towards an image of a shining city. But the path there is rather uncomfortably paved, or rather greased, with spilt blood. Corpses lay on the side of the path. And as you look at these mutilated figures whose blood seemingly lubricates the journey of this sort of macabre procession, you notice that these corpses, there's a theme amongst them. They all seem to be wearing, I guess, amulets, you might say, talismans, symbols of faith, but no crosses, no doves, no Christian iconography. This appears to be the spilt blood of pagans leading the way towards this golden city. And aside from this sight, you also spy another familiar figure. There is an old man in the crowd that's, I don't say necessarily admiring the art, but seems to be taking it perhaps with a bit more seriousness than some of the others whose mouths sort of stand agape. And you recall meeting this old man. It was the very same gentleman that you had encountered in the pews of the Hagia Sophia, the aged artist, or appreciate one who might appreciate art, whose son had played a part in the beautiful mosaics adorning the Hagia Sophia, though you do recall him saying that he was, I guess, too old to pursue the craft himself anymore, but still appreciates the art. And you see him too, again, not necessarily appreciating the art, but appears to be perhaps contemplating it. What do you do? Do you bear this sight in mind, or do you sort of plow straight ahead towards the home of Anthemius?
Does the art look to be of like the same kind of quality?
Yeah, it's
Same
fairly
characteristics.
obvious. It's fairly obvious to you that this appears to be a very, if not the same artist, a very, very good copy or very good clone of the style, if not the exact same.
All right. I'm just gonna continue to the guy's place. Seems he didn't pay attention to my dreams.
And yeah, with that, you forge on ahead and make your way to the residence of Anthemius. And you put your plan into action here. You have, again, sort of constructed this identity and, shall we say, conversation for Minervina. And at this point, it's all up to her and the planning that you've so painstakingly done to assist her. And I suppose you wait. Do you intend to do anything while you're waiting for Minervina to fulfill her end of this operation? Are you attempting to like spy on the manor or any sense, or are you just sort of waiting in the wings for your chance to strike?
Well, I feel like my warning was pretty clear, so I think I know I'm gonna wait for it. I'm just gonna wait, and then we're gonna release a classic. We're gonna do something a little classic here.
Something a little classic. All right, so the waiting is always the most painful part as you sort of sit outside the modest manor of Anthemius and try and make yourself scarce. And you kind of, watch the crowd, watch the sun as it sort of begins its arc across the sky, and wait, and wait, and wait, each second wondering what might be happening beyond those closed doors. And eventually, your patience is rewarded as you see Minervina exit the residence. And he and Anthemius here seem to be striking up a bit of a brief conversation, kind of standing in the door here, that sort of long drawn out goodbye, as it were, giving you an opportunity to strike.
All right, awesome.
What do you do?
I'm gonna go. I think it's time for some revelations of smoke and flame. And I'll spend my pillar point. We're just gonna go tier 1.
Tier 1, okay.
So that's the Arisen breathes forth a cloud of cloying smoke, sweet in essence, fills up an area of her second times 10 yards and radius for the scene.
So, standing somewhere outside of the manor here, you just let out this like massive smoke screen, and like it provides you ample cover, though of course everyone else that is unfortunately sort of caught in this this mystical smoke is not as kind to react to this. You hear sort of like panicked screams and people sort of like dropping their goods as, you know, there's suddenly this giant cloud of smoke that sort of billows out to envelop, you know, this chunk of the street, of the alley leading up to Anthemius's home, and of course encompassing your quarry and Minervina herself. Though you, given your power, your utterance here, you are not affected by this blinding smoke. You can see, I suppose, in a sense, quite clearly through this smoke, through this haze, and probably arguably with more, I guess, you have that tactile sensation, your like sense of touch expanding through your smoke screen here, giving you a very adept perception of the unfolding chaos. So with the sort of diversion or distraction thrown up and people beginning to sort of panic, or rather act unexpectedly as one might when a sudden explosion of smoke covers the street, what are you doing with this cover that you've provided? What's your next step in this grand plan here?
Well, I guess I would show up in front of his face.
Are you sort of like dragging him like back into the manor, as it were, or are you like trying to like have this like shakedown in the doorway, or what are you doing?
I want to keep him inside. Yeah.
Right. Why don't you give me, say, strength and brawl, and if you want to spend willpower, if you want to spend some of your pillar points to juice up your muscles, that's totally cool too. I guess it depends on how much oomph you want behind the shove here. How much you want to scare the bejesus out of them.
The problem's I'm pretty much spent. No successes.
What? Lucky that's not a chance die.
Indeed. So, unfortunately, a bit spent, as it were. You attempt to sort of, rush in there and get a hold of Anthemius and cast him aside. And he puts up a bit more resistance than expected. Perhaps you underestimate the man. And he's not so, I guess, easily corralled into his home here. Now, leaving the two of you in a bit of a tussle in the entryway here, as Minervina, who is also blinded by this, has no idea what's going on besides the sounds of a struggle happening an area a few feet away from her. But you realize he's putting up perhaps a bit more of a fight than you anticipated. Now, perhaps we switch tactics, I suppose. Shall we? I know the last.
Yeah, I guess I could just talk.
Yeah, the last time I believe you had casted your utterance, the dreams of dead gods. You had plagued his sleep with nightmares, and indeed, seeing through the cloud of smoke as you can, he doesn't look too good. He's definitely got some bags under his eyes. This man, he doesn't look like he really did all that much sleeping, or if he did, it wasn't really that restful. But nonetheless, he manages to put a bit of a fight. But I think it's perhaps now time to call in that trump card of yours, the the dreams of dead gods here. So you've sort of laid a trap, as it were, the next time that he should find himself in your presence. You can kind of pull on those, I guess, nightmares, as it were. Now, how do you go about this? So you kind of like fail to kind of throw him back into the home. How I guess, are you introducing yourselves, or what's your opening line here as you attempt to intimidate Anthemius here into compliance? Under the cover of your cloying smoke.
I guess I'll pull from last time. See my. I'll state that I guess my message apparently wasn't clear.
And upon hearing your voice, you feel and see Anthemius here literally freeze for a moment, like he stops dead in his struggling as he recognizes who you are and perhaps has some vague inkling of what you are, given the horrific nightmares you've beguiled him with, you've tormented him with. And with that, you get to, I believe it is, inflict the frightened condition on poor Anthemius here as he realizes who is standing before him, who is grappling with him. And with that as soon as that deer in headlights, shall we say, state ends, as soon as that begins to click, he kind of just does the job for you. And Anthemius just bolts back into his home as you're like kind of struggling to corral him in there. He does it himself, and despite his running, of course, your beautiful smoke screen sort of following you extends your perception, and there's no getting away from you at this point. You can feel him as he attempts to run through the home, perhaps wrongly seeking somewhere to hide. He can run, but he can't hide from you. As he runs, what are you doing? And what are you doing with Minervina as Anthemius bolts here? How do you respond?
I guess I'm just gonna kind of forget about Minervina for now. But I am going
leave her
to
alone
just
in the dark. And all right, sorry, going after Anthemius here. What have you got in store for our artiste?
I like the idea of just like slowly walking towards him while letting him know he can't run from me, and I know where he is. And,
I can see.
Maybe I'll tip some things over, make an extra bit of noise on my way to him.
Music suddenly becomes like much more dramatic. Like you got like harps and not harps, but string quartets or like destroying the strings, making those like horrible screeching sounds as you move through this darkened smoke.
Beautiful.
Suddenly takes on the aesthetic of like a 80s horror film. The mummy is
you can run, but you can't hide.
Wrapped in toilet paper.
Scary Terry, you can run, but you can't hide, bitch.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think I might have something for that. Let me see if I can switch the music here. But maybe not that one. I'll go with this one. Yeah, so you kind of follow after Anthemius here, a slow kind of methodical gait, as it were, really taking your time to savor this poor artist's fear, and you sort of, he's got his religious iconography, the art, and you enjoying kind of tossing these things aside casually, breaking that bust on the table here, the shattering of the stone as you keep your methodical pace following after Anthemius. And you corner the man in his workshop, as it were, in the sort of surrounded by his own works of art in progress, and the paint and brushes and other tools. He's run out of room to run. You can feel him, you can see him now, kind of huddled in the corner, almost in the fetal position, sort of covering himself, shaking, hoping, praying that you will not find him, but he does not know that you already know exactly where he is. And he can only watch in horror as he hears your footsteps one by one into his workshop here. You've got him cornered. What do you do?
Well, I guess, because my whole goal is to, I guess, I wanted him to confess, and I guess I want him to repent. I'll ask him if he understands what he's done wrong.
You ask if he understands what he's done wrong.
Why I'm here today.
And
are you happy with your long haul service?
Yes.
Reaching you about your car's extended work.
God damn. Lord. Well, nonetheless, you inquire if he knows what he's done, and with that, as he's huddled here, Anthemius sort of like he shouts out a sort of panicked, I've done nothing, and he's clearly lying. But what else does a man do in his situation but try and escape, however feebly? Do you continue to press him? How do you wrench, I guess, a confession out of this poor soul?
I read quite a bit of that Bible, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some passages in there. So, maybe, guiding him,
Gonna invoke some
maybe kind of play off the, like, omnipotence and, like, truths and lies.
Yeah, maybe a little dash of fire and brimstone in there. The hell that awaits.
Yeah.
Really, put the zealotry into here. Why don't you give me an intimidation roll, and Now, I think if I remember correctly, did you make an effort to infect him with Sybaris the last time?
I did not, but I'll
Okay.
probably do that this time.
Well, you did touch him before, as you were
Oh
trying
wait, no, I did.
to wrangle him.
I think I did.
So let me roll for the next stage of the Sybaris here, which again, unfortunately for him, is a chance dice given your current sakam of 7. So
If you're lucky.
yeah, if he's lucky. Unfortunately,
no, he's not. Yeah.
Fortunately, 9 is not a success on a chance dice. So he slipped even further into Sybaris at this point. He's gone from what is it? Unease into is what, terror is the next one? Let me double check. Oh yes, unease into terror. Yes, as fear begins to consume him, he perceives you. Well, for what little he perceives of you, at least your voice, your intonation, your dread presence here is quite literally, in this case, a walking nightmare for him. And on this intimidation roll, you get an exceptional success on 3 successes. And I think you also have an affinity for this intimidation, right? The towering presence, I believe, lets you add to your intimidation rolls.
I don't know if I can.
I think that
Right
one's just
now.
automatic. I don't think you have to spend an expenditure for towering presence.
I think I've actually used that ever.
I think we had briefly used it when you were interrogating that soldier that you burnt to death way back when.
Ah,
Good
good time.
intimidation and politics rolls. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that is free. I had to do willpower for other effects. So I get a +4. Presence, intimidation.
Yeah.
+4. No successes.
Oh, no successes on 8 dice. Oof.
That is bad. Oof.
Yes. Quite a bit sad here. And your target, your quarry here, is reluctant, and you pressure him, you push him, and he almost defiantly, not quite, but instead greets your commands, your speech of fire and brimstone, he meets it with his own question, sort of, who are you? What do you want? Leave me alone.
Well, I guess fire and brimstone. I want to kind of pivot into how he needs to repent. He needs to change his ways. Get a little preachery on him.
Yeah. So switching gears here, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just kind of rolling like I didn't fail. Like,
Yeah,
sir.
like, this isn't working. He's proving a tough
oh
nut
yeah.
to crack. I guess in that case, why don't you make me probably a presence and expression roll? I guess if you want a more sort of impassioned speech on why you are here and what you want of him.
Oh, there we go. After 14 dice, we get 2 successes.
2 successes.
Actually, 15 dice. I've rolled 15 dice and I got 2 successes.
Beautiful. Well, 2 successes is something. It's enough. And with this, you speak your words to Anthemius, and they fall upon his frightened ears. And although he does not relax, shall we say, he asks you a question in his fear, in his attempt to understand, and he says, what are you? Are you the devil come to torment me?
Oh.
I did not believe. I did not know. What have I done?
Angels are actually pretty terrifying in the Bible, right?
Biblically
right.
accurate angels are pretty terrifying too.
I'd be a lie to say I'm an angel. But I can speak of the horrors of angels in the Bible.
You don't have to confirm what he has to say, but you can certainly embellish it a bit.
I'll embellish it a little bit. I'll talk about the truths of the Bible and the horrors of the angels, and I'm here for his
his heresy.
For his lies.
His
heresy, the damage of his lies have caused on the people around him.
It is a sin to lie.
And the truth comes out in this moment as you speak to him on the nature of truth and lying and of heaven and hell, or at least what you've garnered from your brief time studying the religion of this era, of these mortal faiths. And you realize something, or rather, Anthemius here reveals the duplicity, the lie behind this all. And you kind of got an inkling of it before. He said that he did not believe. And the truth comes out. Anthemius kind of stammering out, begging for forgiveness, that he did not believe in you, believe in the Lord, and throwing himself sort of at the floor, begs for forgiveness for his sins, for keeping true to the old ways, to the pagan faiths of old Greece, for his lip service, for his facade that he has maintained, that he has taken on the air of a man of the faith, but has kept to the old faiths, that of the days of a long forgotten Greece. And Anthemius here sort of stammers that, yes, now I see the truth, the errors of my ways. Yes, I was wrong. Everyone was right. I was a fool. What would you have of me? What punishments have I wrought for my duplicity?
Can I get a vibe check on my judge?
Oh, your judge is a goddamn. He is a distant god, if that, but there is sort of an inkling, as it were, of this grave heresy now that you feel, that you know. You see now the sin that he's committed, the sin that your Judge Nebha, the Flame, arbiter of truth, punisher of lies, has seen fit to punish. This man who has sort of taken on the air of a man of the faith, a respected man in the community who has been secretly clinging to the old ways and even going so far as to construct these heretical works of art to tear down the very faith that he falsely claims to uphold. The sort of thing that unravels the fabric of civilization, the society that your judges wish to uphold, law and order. And you cannot fathom the will of your judge so, shall we say, accurately. But you do get the impression, a desire for punishment, for a crime, for this crime to be, shall we say, judged in a biblical sense. And perhaps an Old Testament form of justice here. Take that as you will, but suffice to say that you don't feel any shred of mercy coming from your judge, and it's kind of up to you, shall we say, what punishment to mete out here. But do as you will to earn back the favor of the judge that you have displeased. How do you, I guess, punish this sinner? How do you right the wrong? How do you fulfill your act of penance towards your judge, Nebha? How do you think going about this will earn your place back in the good graces of the Flame? What do you do? What punishment do you mete on this poor, unfortunate soul? How far do you want to go?
Do I need to go as... Oh, I can't actually go to tier 2.
He's at your mercy. Death, dismemberment.
The only thing
What a horrible ways to die.
He will not resist.
I got the pillar point for tier 1. The power of Ray. I'll set him on fire. If my judge seems to wish for Old Testament punishment, we'll burn him.
Falling back on old habits, I see, for Nesret here. You call upon your magic, you evoke this utterance, you unleash the power of Ray, and with this utterance from the depths of your soul. Anthemius here catches a blaze, your mystic, wild flame, instantly raging, and begins to consume Anthemius. And you watch as this man sort of writhes. Futilely, he tries to, roll and writhe about the floor, trying to extinguish these flames. And it's not going well for him. And you watch as soon the screams become quiet as the fire envelops his face, singes his lungs. What do you do here as you watch him burn? Do you wait and watch for the last, gasps of life? Do you show some small measure of mercy here? What will it be? Life or death? Do you show any measure of mercy for this man? Or do you watch as the last embers of his life burn away?
Oh, I guess my only shot at getting willpower from this now. I'll dig into that rageful. I'll dig into the rage.
You invoke that burden of yours. You give in to that rage, that in this case perhaps divine wrath, and you let the wrath of your judge channel through you, and you give no mercy, no succor to Anthemius here, and you keep that flame burning, and you watch as he slows, as his limbs seize until he is little more than this blackened figure, contorted into this sort of grim tableau of pain and fear. And with that, you feel the weight of your penance lifted, the, shall we say, the yoke and rod of your judge loosened ever so slightly from your shoulders, a weight released. And as the smoke and flames recede, and you see the justice that you have wrought to this pagan pretender, there's something else that draws your attention. There's an audible gasp from the entry of the room here, and you see Minervina, who is perhaps made a poor decision to follow after you into the home here, making her way through the dark. And she sees you standing, lording over the corpse of this charred man. She no doubt heard his screams, your words, shown perhaps different side of yourself that Minervina has yet to see. and she stares at you and the blackened, charred corpse of Anthemius on the floor. And perhaps you wonder, she might be having second thoughts. But on that horrible note of yet another grim realization and plot brought to fruition, we shall end this session here. And we'll have to wait until next time to see how these things unfold and where our quest for vengeance brings us next. But regardless, a big thank you to you guys for our session today. And another big thank you to everyone who's happened to tune in today, whether you're a returning, shall we say, guest to our stream, or whether this is your first time. Either way, a big sincere thank you from all of us for joining us on this little adventure today. And to reel things back just a little bit, you guys, how are you guys feeling, and what's going on in your characters' heads at the moment? What's next for them?
I am great. Shistette is kind of pissed, suddenly remembering so much, and having like all kind of suddenly, and with the opportunity to really even the score now that the conquering quill is apparently out of town, and I think someplace in Anatolia, or some archaeological dig that's nowhere near where she is right now, in the middle of what might be his tomb.
Yeah. Right. What about the rest of you gents? How are you guys feeling? What's going on with your characters? What are they thinking?
You go first.
Okay. Thomas is I guess some of it is, his head's spinning a little bit, mostly just thinking, okay, I just told all this to this woman I just remembered I might have had a connection to in a past, and now I basically just spilled the beans, and she's of course unsure about all of this. So
an undead monster.
hopefully that goes well. He suspects it will, but I mean, he's been wrong before. Yeah, he's trying to set up. He's also just trying to. It's basically kind of like I almost feel like Thomas is frazzled, just trying to keep everything together, just so it doesn't fall apart before he can even get his cult back up off the ground.
I'm dead. I have a startling confession. I'm an undead monster.
Yeah, kind of a big hammer to drop
dead.
on the unexpected. Yeah.
I'm dead.
Goodness. And Zavlus, what about you and Nesret?
I was hoping I'd be able to accomplish that a little differently, but it didn't work out the way I planned. I do think that I have a plan for helping with my new Minervina situation. I'll probably end up making some sort of promise to her.
Yeah, trying to deal with the fallout of that. But got some explaining to do, I suppose. Well, nonetheless.
You see, I don't get to make my own decisions. Everyone answers to someone.
Yeah, I just happen to answer to chthonic entities from the underworld. So, yeah. Well, nonetheless, thanks again to you guys for playing with me today. And
No worries.
yeah. And thanks again to everyone tuning in. Thanks to Onyx Path for having us on our channel and being part of the Onyx Path Con here. And thanks as well to Dork Tales for having us on their channel for this session, though you'll normally find us over at, of course, Onyx Path. And thank you to Tabletop Audio for the background music for this chronicle. And lastly, some things to plug. I just mentioned it, but Onyx Path, the virtual gaming convention, if you weren't somehow already aware of it, that is currently going on and will be going on throughout this weekend. So they've got all sorts of games and panels and all sorts of goodies. So if you're not already checking that out, please do. And just as a note, the convention this year is raising money for the Butana group, and all the proceeds from Start Playing raised over the weekend will go to them. So if you want to donate to charity, that's an awesome way to do it. Now, crowdfunding, there's also a current campaign going on for the They Came From RPG anthology, so go check that out over at Kickstarter if you're interested in the They Came From series. And there's also the Onyx Path game night on the last Friday of every month. So if you want to play a game like this or any of the other many games that Onyx Path has, go check that out and try out some of these games for yourself. And lastly, there is also a sale right now over at Indie Press Revolution for Storyteller screens. So if you're interested in picking up one of those, go check that out. And I guess finally, a big thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thanks for tuning into our stream. We hope to see you guys and gals and non-binary pals again. So if you like what you saw, please check us out for our next sessions, or go back and see some of our previous sessions if you want to catch up, shall we say. Anyway, a big thank you to everyone again, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Have a great time, and have a good night.